The Indianapolis Colts right now are leading the NFL. Not only do they have the best record, but they're leading the Indianapolis Colts are leading the NFL in points per game with 33.1 points per game. All right, welcome to Just the Stats NFL Top 10's for Friday. I'm Ernie Jennings, your host, and I'm looking forward to this podcast. Talk a little bit about the game last night, even though there's not a lot to talk about. I'm glad to be back in my house doing my podcast. It's a little bit more convenient than being on the road, though it's not impossible on the road with technology today. It makes it pretty easy, but I do like being in the office and being able to do it here. Yeah, so we'll look at the game last night a little bit. One team top 10 we'll talk about, and then we'll look at a couple of the players in that area for especially Herbert and Jefferson, as far as where they stand now in the top 10 in their area of expertise. And then we'll look at some other top 10s involving teams and wrap it up for the weekend. And then we'll be looking forward to some good games on Sunday and Monday. Hopefully they're all good, exciting types of games to watch. But yeah, I'm back in the office. And so let's get started with this episode of Just the Stats, top 10s for Friday. All right, we'll start with a Thursday night game between Minnesota Vikings, Los Angeles Chargers. Both of them really needed a win. I mean, the Vikings are 3-3. They just need to stay in touch with the leaders there. And then the Chargers, the same thing. Started off hot. Now they're 4-3. They're tied with the Chiefs, even though they have an edge because of divisional rankings. But they both needed the win to stay up there. And unfortunately for Minnesota, they just completely flopped. It was 37-10. Carson Wentz doesn't look good at all. I mean, I know he was hurt, but he has the same problem he's had everywhere, and that is he just does not throw the ball. He'll pump, and then he's sacked. He was sacked 5 times. He just has got to get rid of the ball, and he doesn't do it. I don't think he'll be the quarterback in 10 days when they play again. Hopefully they'll get the young rookie McCarthy back, and not a rookie really, but his rookie season as far as playing. He's got to be better than Wentz. Wentz just strong arm, but man, he just won't throw it. Now, Justin Herbert, on the other hand, only threw the ball 25 times, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. They ran the ball 43 times. They just 207 yards rushing. Herbert had 62 of them. I'll bet next when I do the top 10 quarterbacks as far as rushing, he'll be right up there near the top with 62 yards. Now, as far as other stats in this game, Justin Herbert already going into the week was number 1 in the NFL in yards passed. So he only bumped it up by 227 yards, which is going to open it up for most likely Dak Prescott and Matthew Stafford to possibly catch him. I mean, Prescott only needs 260 yards in his game. And it's not a lot. It's not a few either, but Prescott, the way he's been passing, he'd probably be able to do that. So he could be number 1. And then Matthew Stafford needs 275 yards. So it's very possible he also ends up somewhere near the top, back in the number 1 position. Patrick Mahomes could, but he'd need 340 yards. That's a bit much. He hasn't thrown that many yards this year. Now, looking at touchdowns, with those 3 touchdowns, it did jump him up to tied for second right now, but obviously Prescott hadn't played. He's got 16, and Stafford hasn't played. He's got 17, so they'll extend past him. It'll be up to like Jared Goff to maybe try to catch Herbert and pass him again and so forth. Aaron Rodgers. They showed an interesting stat yesterday on the game, not counting Herbert, who just jumped into the top 5 players, but the top 5 were Stafford, Prescott, Goff, Rodgers, and Mahomes. All of them 30 or older. It's kind of interesting stat as far as leading in touchdown passes. Now, Herbert, he did have one interception, which puts him right now in fourth right now in the NFL with 7. That's a little bit many. 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. It's a little better than a 2-to-1 ratio. It's what you kind of want. But unlike, say, Geno Smith, 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. That's the wrong way completely. And then the other stat, Herbert hasn't really been up here in this number, but he's number 2 actually right now with 22 sacks. He was sacked in the game, but he's got 22. It's on the high end, obviously, but not. He won't be in the top. He'll be in the top 10 probably after this game, but bottom end of top 10 as far as that goes. Now, looking at the receivers, and as far as rushing, there's nobody to talk about here. It was a bad game for the running backs for Minnesota. Jordan Mason, holy cow. I think he had 4 carries for 3 yards. It was terrible. They fell behind immediately, Minnesota did, and then the running game was non-existent. I mean, even when he tried to run it, he didn't get anything. So it was terrible. Now, Vidal, who's just the backup guy, had over 100 yards for the Chargers. He had an excellent game. But as far as receivers go in the top 10, well, you do have Justin Jefferson now. As far as receptions go, he's still not in the top 10, and he won't be, obviously. Even with 7 catches in this game, he's still not in the top 10. As far as yards go, though, right now he is 5th in yards because he is averaging almost 15 yards a catch, 14.7. He's got 602 yards, so he'll probably be passed by maybe a couple people, Amon-Ra St. Brown this week, and then Emeka Egbuka as well. Christian McCaffrey could catch him. He'd need about 90, 85 yards, 86 yards, which is quite a bit for a running back, so I wouldn't think that would be the case. And then Devontae Smith, if he had a 100-yard game, he'd catch him as well. Anybody after that, all these players in the top 10, so I do expect Justin Jefferson to still be in the top 10 after all the other players play. So not there in receptions, but definitely there in yards so far. And not in there in touchdowns either. He's only got 1 touchdown. The 1 touchdown that the Vikings got, Addison had that touchdown pass. The only touchdown that in the game for them. And that one was just almost not fluky, but fortunate that they had a penalty. They had kicked a field goal. There was a penalty, took the field goal away, and then they were able to throw a touchdown pass. All right. So as far as that game goes in top 10s, we do have Cameron Dicker came into the game. He's the kicker for the Chargers. Came into the game tied for 9th all-time in Los Angeles Chargers franchise history in scoring with 418 points. He was tied with Austin Eckler. He had 13 points in this game, so he's now got 431, so he's in 8th place all by himself. Next up for him will be Lance Allworth, quite a ways away with 500 points. So he's got 69 points to get there. He might make that by the end of the year. That's going to be tough. 13 points a game, he could do it. But that'll be his next target. Got a couple of people he could possibly catch this year, and then there's another big gap. Antonio Gates is in 5th with 700 points. Tight end with 700 points. Travis Kelce for the Chiefs is their leading scorer. But he's been on that same team his entire history of that team. All right, so that's the only top 10 as far as a team goes in this game. All right, so let's take a look at the teams. What teams are doing well in different categories? We'll start with points per game. The Indianapolis Colts right now are leading the NFL. Not only do they have the best record, but they're leading the Indianapolis Colts are leading the NFL in points per game with 33.1 points per game. That is excellent. to be racking up that many points per game. Dallas Cowboys 31.7, so 1.4 points behind. And then Detroit Lions 30.7. They're the only teams over 30 points a game. And Detroit Lions led the NFL last year in scoring. And, they lost a lot of their offensive leadership on the coaching side. And yet here they are back averaging almost 31 points a game. So says something about the continuity of the head coach there and the coaches that took over after the ones that left. There's a big drop off after those top three teams. Buffalo Bills are fourth, but they're 27.8, so almost 3 points behind the third place Detroit Lions, and then almost six behind Indianapolis Colts. So it's a big drop off between those top three teams averaging over 30, and then the Buffalo Bills and Seattle Seahawks averaging better than 27.5 points. So those are your top few teams. Didn't mention it, but I will put charts up if you're watching this on video. It'll have all the top 10 teams as far as points per game, and different charts that I mentioned today will be up on YouTube if you want to look at them as you watch the podcast, if you're not listening on some podcast app or wherever you happen to listen to podcasts. All right, so Indianapolis Colts, 33.1 points per game to lead the NFL. Now, points allowed, Houston Texans only are allowing 14.7 points a game, basically 2 touchdowns a game they're allowing. Excuse me, to take a drink. But second is Los Angeles Rams at 16.7 and Kansas City Chiefs at 17.7. So really the Houston Texans, 14.7. Now what's interesting here is the Indianapolis Colts are ninth they're allowing 20 points a game. They're scoring 33 points a game and allowing 20. That's a huge differential, 13-point differential. And we'll look at that next, how that pans out. But right now, that's why they are 6-1. And, regardless of who they've played so far, whoever they've played, they've dominated. They beat the Chargers. Chargers came back and beat Minnesota. But they have looked impressive. All right, let's look at that point differential, the scoring margin. They have a huge gap over the Detroit Lions, who are second. Indianapolis Colts are plus 13.1 points per game. So they're scoring on average more than 13 points a game than the competition they're playing against. Detroit Lions are second with 9.1. And then Kansas City Chiefs, 8.9. So basically the Lions and Chiefs are outscoring the other team by 9 points, Indianapolis Colts by 13. So that's 4 points. That's better than a field goal per game better. And just as comparison, I mean, the Rams are 8.3, Seattle Seahawks 8.1. There's a big drop off to the, not a big, but New England Patriots 6.9. The Buffalo Bills round this top 10 out with 5. They're beating their opponent by 5 points a game. Indianapolis Colts 13. So that's an 8-point difference between the number 1 team in the scoring margin and the number 10 team. That just shows you some of the reasons Indianapolis Colts are winning right now. They just have a very efficient offense and a very, a good defense. So that combination will get you quite a ways in the NFL for sure. All right, let's look at the top 10 teams as far as sacks go. Denver Broncos, they're dominating this category right now. 34 sacks they've had so far in their games. The Rams, 26. They're second with 26. Then you got the Lions and the Seahawks with 23 apiece. So the Broncos have really put together a decent team. And I did not expect, actually, as many sacks. I guess you could have. I bet some of these sacks could be called coverage sacks because their secondary is so good that may force quarterbacks to have to hang onto the ball longer than they want to as they look for an open receiver. And that may explain why their number is so high. but I did expect them to have a very good defense. Now, despite the score they had last week, allowing the Giants so many points, 32, I believe, even though the Broncos ended up winning that in that crazy game where they scored 33 points in the fourth quarter. But the Broncos, 8-sack lead over the Los Angeles Rams, quite a bit there. Like I said, Lions and Seahawks 23. And then here's the Colts again, 7th with 19 sacks so far this season. So some of the other teams that are up there, like Detroit Lions, who I've mentioned, right up there, near the numbers that the Colts are putting up. They're 23 sacks. The other team I've mentioned a couple of times is Chiefs. They are not on this list. At least they're not in the top 10. So that's your look at your top 10 teams as far as sacks. Denver Broncos, 34 sacks this season to lead the NFL. Now, looking at penalties, on the good side, that is, Cincinnati Bengals, though their team hasn't been that good, even though now with Flacco, they are definitely have a possibility of changing their direction. They looked like they were headed before he showed up. I mean, with Jake Browning, they were going down, and that was the only direction. So Flacco has really helped them look like they possibly could make it into the playoffs. And if they keep up in this category of penalties, they definitely have a chance. So far, they've had 38 penalties, the same as the Rams, 38 penalties, but that's in 7 games. So they're averaging 5.4 penalties per game. The Atlanta Falcons have fewer penalties, but in 1 less game, so they're averaging 5.5 penalties a game. There's not a big difference between these top 10. I mean, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 10th. They're averaging 6.5 penalties a game, so basically 1 more penalty a game than the Cincinnati Bengals. So you really see some of these teams. I mean, you got when I look at it, you would think there's a couple teams on here, so it's not necessarily the teams with the fewer penalties are the winning teams, but it is that case a lot. I mean, you do have like the Baltimore Ravens and the Las Vegas Raiders on here as in the top 10 as far as fewest penalties, and they're obviously not playing well at all. It's kind of an interesting category, and I mentioned this category, on the other end of the scale, the Jacksonville Jaguars are averaging over 9 penalties a game. So like I said, Cincinnati Bengals have 38 penalties. Jaguars have 65. It just kills your momentum when you have that many penalties. You're averaging over 9 penalties a game versus the Cincinnati Bengals averaging just over 5. That's 4 penalties, almost double the amount of penalties a game. 4 more penalties a game than Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, you cannot expect to go too far with that many penalties. All right. One more category we'll take a look at, and that's this turnover differential. Another category where generally teams in the positive here have a definite advantage as far as winning a game. That's always been one of the keys. You win the turnover battle, you win a game. That's generally the case, not always the case. Chicago Bears, they have a differential of plus 11. They've taken the ball away 16 times and only given it up 5. So that's huge. I mean, that's impressive. That's better, much better than any other team right now. Jacksonville Jaguars are plus 8. They've taken the ball away 14 times and given it away 6. The problem with the Jaguars is they had 13 takeaways after 5 games. After 6, they had 14. Oh, I think they had 14 after 5, and they haven't had a takeaway in the last 2 games. So they were averaging the first 4 games. They were averaging 3 takeaways a game. I mean, they were looking like they were going to break the NFL record, and then they've just been on a slide these last 2 games. Not looking good at all. Now here's the Colts again. Number 3, 7 plus 7 in the turnover differential. 11 takeaways, only giving the ball away 4 times. So not as many takeaways compared to the Jaguars and Bears, but then again, not as many giveaways either. So that's why they're up there. And here again, Detroit Lions right behind the Colts again. These two teams, who knows if it comes down to them by the end of the year. But the Detroit Lions +6 in the differential, 11 takeaways as well, but one extra giveaway, 5 for them. Now the Kansas City Chiefs are here. They're 5th, +5. What's curious about this one, the fewest takeaways, they only have 7 on the teams in the top 10 here. I got 9 because then there's a bunch of teams with 3 differential +3, so I didn't put them all. But Kansas City Chiefs only have 7 takeaways, but then on the other hand, they've only given the ball away twice. One of those was in that Jaguar game where Lloyd caught the ball at the 1-yard line, ran it back. It was intercepted Mahomes, the 1-yard line, ran it back 99 yards for a touchdown, which helped the Jaguars end up beating the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's one of 2 turnovers they've had this year. That's really good. I mean, that's a key to success. The Colts only have 4. Turnover differential is huge. And if you're only giving the ball away twice, as like the Kansas City Chiefs, you're just not stopping your drives when you do that, when you're that good at it. So those are a look at the top 5 teams. And again, when we've looked at all these numbers, you see the Colts, the Lions, and the Chiefs up here. So you could see at some point, now obviously we're not even halfway through the season, but you could see at some point a battle between the Colts and the Chiefs as far as who's going to go further, as far as the Super Bowl is, I guess what I'm saying. That'd be something huge for the Colts, whereas the Chiefs, they're used to that kind of pressure that you get as it mounts when you're trying to win your division, win your conference, and then make it to the Super Bowl. They're used to that type of thing. Again, looking at these numbers, the Colts are consistently up there, whether it's offensive numbers or defensive numbers, as are the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs. So it'll be fun to watch them. Some of the teams like last year, I mean, the Eagles I've only mentioned them briefly. I haven't even mentioned them at all, actually, but they are +4 in a turnover differential. Not the type of team we saw last year. All right, well, that's a look at some various stats for this Friday. Just wanted to get that in here. Things to think about as far as we go into this week and teams to watch and see how they do, how they continue. Is Indianapolis going to score that many points a game as are the same with the Lions, for example? And are they going to be that good on defense again this week? I think the Colts will be. I believe if they're playing the Tennessee Titans, they definitely have a chance to pad their numbers some more. But all right, that's a wrap for this episode. Please like, subscribe. You can find it on YouTube at Just the Stats NFL. And you can also listen to it on YouTube, or you can listen to it on Apple, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you use. Appreciate the comments I've gotten so far. And the people that have subscribed, appreciate that as well. So with that, I will be back on Monday to see what happened on Sunday. Football. Can't wait for NFL football on Sunday and then to talk about it on Monday. All right, well, that is a wrap. Enjoy your weekend of football. I'm out.